You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Okay, so this 16-year-old firecracker adoptee shares so much of her heart, especially toward the end of this interview. We do divert off into talking about writing. We get squirreled a little bit because we're both writers. So hopefully you can ride that out with us, because what she has to say from a 16-year-old perspective, her heart just flings wide open. Like the last 10 minutes of this interview, every time I listen to it, I just think to myself, oh, if I would have been this wise at 16 years old, I think a lot of things would have been different in my own life. So I hope you enjoy this interview, which is a mix of her poetry. We do have some lighthearted conversation in the beginning, but it really does dive into the reality of what it's been like for her to be adopted. So, yeah, just hold on for the ride. Hello, precious people. I am so excited to invite you to this conversation today with Myles Redfern. That is not her real name. That is her writing name. She has decided to remain anonymous so she can really fill in her story and do it without restriction. And so we're just really thrilled to hear from this beautiful young woman. She is 16 years old. Yes, we had parent signs, so it's all good. And she is a writer, she's an adoptee, and she is a force of nature. I met her through Anne Heffron, who wrote You Don't Look Adopted. She is also a writing coach, and she told me about this dynamic young lady. And when we had our first conversation, I just knew we all needed to hear her voice and hear from her. And so without any more gushing, I just wanted to introduce Myles Redfern. And Myles, if you could just tell us, maybe let's just start about what is it like to be adopted? Give us a little bit of history on your story, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay, well, I was born in Michigan to a single mother, and I was adopted essentially the day of when I was born. And so my parents drove from California to Michigan, got me, and then came back. And, that's pretty much what I got. I live in California now. I've had an interest in ice skating since I was 7. I'm a writer and an avid reader of all things literature. I like to consider myself an optimistic realist, and I'm hopefully on my way to discovering my full potential as a writer and adoptee and a positive influence on the people around me.
Oh, thank you for that, Myles. I think that's what I love so much about you. Is one of the offers you gave me is, if you need something positive, just call me up. And I love that. And I think adoptees, we go through a process, and all of it's different as to, accepting ourselves and identity. And can you tell us how you're working on that and what your parents have done to help you? Because I know your parents are wonderful and you spoke very highly of them. It'd just be really nice for other parents listening in to know what adoptees need. If you can speak to that, that would be great.
Yeah, my parents are incredible. They've been telling me that I was adopted since I was a kid, and not like the, oh, you're adopted, you're not our kid. It's like the, hey, you're adopted, but that makes you as much our child as you would be if we were your biological parents. And, they've always been supportive for any questions I've had. They've always provided me with resources for research, or if I was curious about anything, they'd tell me what I wanted to know. Even when I just started reading, they bought me these little books just explaining to kids about adoption. What is adoption? And, they'd always give me reassurance that, hey, yes, you are our child no matter what. And I think that's probably the most important thing as a teenager that I had to recognize was, just because I'm not genetically related to my parents, that doesn't make me any different from a child that lives with their biological parents.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I always know like everybody has a different experience, but I remember in my experience just feeling sometimes like an outsider, and I know that's not always, and I'm so glad that your parents are doing such a good job of making you feel really loved and cared for, and that your opinions and ideas and thoughts matter. That's really powerful. And I think, one of the things that adoptees feel a lot of, and maybe you haven't had this experience, but is guilt and shame for asking questions or being curious about where we come from and our origin. How do you respond to adoptees that might feel guilty about trying to find out more, or maybe be hesitant about asking their parents questions?
Well, being adopted, I can say from my own experience that every time I've asked my parents a question about my biological mother, they've answered, but no matter what the question is, I still feel like someone's jammed their fist into my stomach and like twirled it around like a key on a wind up tool. Like it's just like a gut wrenching. Should I be asking this question? I mean, my parents are so open and so willing to give me the information, but I still feel a little bit, eh, like I'm asking about something that's just a sensitive topic, even though it's really for us, it's not. Um, and I mean, again, my parents are accepting, and I feel this guilt. So, what's it like for the adoptees whose parents enforce the feelings of guilt and shame for asking questions that most people have the answer to the day that they're born? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the important question. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know a lot of adoptees my age. I mean, I know a few, but I mean, they're most of them, as far as I know, are in the same situation that I'm in. Like, their parents are just very open, very supportive, and very telling of whatever they want to know. But yeah.
Yeah, that is really great. And that's exciting to hear, because I think I'm 55. And when I grew up, I think there was a lot more secrecy and a lot more hiding and shame surrounding adoption. And I think that's a good sign, like to hear from you that other teenagers that have a similar supportive experience, and maybe things are changing and evolving. So that is really encouraging. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I really want to spend time on your creative side. And when you read, I remember when you did, am I saying this right? Your slam poetry, is that what we
Yeah.
call it?
We'll just call
Okay.
it that.
All right. Well,
for all
okay.
intents
First
and
of all,
purposes.
when you read your slam poetry to me, I literally felt like I was slammed up against the wall in my kitchen, and I slid down. And I just remember holding the phone and listening to your voice. And it was so powerful, Myles. I would just love to know a couple of things. How did you come up with your writing name? And what does writing mean to you in particular? What about the poetry? Like for me, I love poetry as well, because I feel like it's this mind like challenge to create poetry. It's almost like a song
It's
for
like
people who can't sing.
it's like voluntarily playing tug of war with your own mind. Like, oh, I'm going to pull myself in this direction. Oh no, this direction. Oh my gosh, these words are coming all over the place, but somehow they fit together, so it sounds cool. My writing name is not remarkable. I literally just went on a name generator and tried to find out anything that sounded cool. Like, there's no significance to the name. I just like, hey, it sounds cool. And it's a fairly androgynous name, so.
That is not what I was expecting the answer to be. I'll take it though, because you know what? It doesn't matter, because what you write it's way beyond dynamic. So I thought maybe it had something to do with like where the red fern grows. Maybe you don't even know about that story, but I wasn't sure.
I'm afraid I don't.
Okay, well, don't. It's a sad story. You don't want to hear it. Yeah. So how did poetry arrive? Like, were you really little when you started to create poetry, or tell us the origin?
Once again, this is actually a little bit of a partially impressive, partially not what you'd expect, and entirely mundane. I've always been into the arts, like writing, photography, drawing, painting, whatever. I've always had an interest in that. And, for the first part of my life, up until I was about 7, I had like complete creative freedom. And then when I was 7, I changed schools, and I wound up going to this private school that was like, it had a Christian name, but it wasn't a Christian school. It was like very strictly enforced. And I remember being beyond excited to, oh my gosh, we have a genuine art class here. Like, we have someone who's going to help us learn how to do art. And the thing about the art class was it wasn't I'm going to give you an idea and you can sort of toy with it however you want. No, this was I'm going to give you a step-by-step on how to make the entire class of 24 kids do the exact same thing. And so that was the number one turnoff. I was like, oh, this isn't particularly fun. And so then in my English class, we started doing poetry, and I got super excited about that. And the same thing happened with that teacher. And I mean, being at that school until 6th grade just sort of knocked off all my creative genius or whatever, creative mojo. And then I wound up changing schools again across the country. We went from California to Connecticut, started 7th grade, new people entirely. And the art class that I went to there was like, oh, so I have complete creative liberty and I had no idea what to do with it. And then the same with the English class. I was like, oh, hey, they're asking us to just write something about ourselves. They said they didn't care what it was. They didn't care if it was an essay, if it was 3 sentences, if it was a poem. So it said, hey, why not do a poem? And so I tried a poem and I was not good at it. It was awful. I mean, it was really bad. And, poetry is something I've always loved reading. And so I've always sort of come back to it like, hey, what if I tried this? Nope, that was bad. And so then I keep coming back every so often. But then here's the sort of unremarkable thing. After a year-long hiatus of just not writing, I watched Derek DelGaudio's In and of Itself on Hulu. And I mean, it is the most amazing thing that I have ever seen. And it was about discovering your identity. Who are you? Where do you belong in a society of people who are outwardly all the same? Like, are you, I don't know, an architect? Are you a ninja? Are you a unicorn? Like, what are you? Are you a ruletista? And it's just always playing into all these different parts of someone's story. And that sort of ticked something. And I realized this production comes from a raw place in this guy's mind. I mean, he's telling his story and he's being completely open and completely vulnerable. And that's what I was missing. And so that night, it's like 12 o'clock, like midnight. And I wrote down just the 2 words on a piece of paper, I am. And within about 10 minutes of me breathing heavily, almost going into a panic attack and sobbing, I wrote my first piece of slam poetry called I Am. And I read it to my mom, and I'm pretty sure she almost passed out. I don't want to sound like I'm like bolstering myself, but And then I read it to my dad, and he's pretty flat-faced. He doesn't show when he's impressed about something, and I actually got a look from him. So,
well, I think if you're willing to, I mean, this is the perfect intro for that. If you're willing to do that for us, we would really love it. I think this is the one that you read to me, and it was just absolutely amazing. Can you tell us you told us a little bit about the history, but what does it mean to you? Was it really you coming into your identity, revealing another part of yourself, discovering yourself? What does it mean to you?
Watching it really sort of made me look into my own identity. This was like hey, I haven't really figured that out yet, but it did sort of take something into adoption. And so I sort of just poured out my own feelings into this. Like, this poem particularly just sort of touches my heart a little bit, not in the sense that it's not sad. It's just, oh, these are my raw feelings. This is what poetry is supposed to be. This is raw. It's genuine. It's unedited. It's unfiltered. This is my writing. This is me. This is what I'm doing, and I like it.
Okay, well, I have my Kleenex ready. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready too.
Oh, and I also wrote another one that I wanted to reveal to you today, if you want to hear it.
You can reveal all of them.
Okay. So this one is, am I? Am I? A phrase, not yet a question, incomplete without a predecessor. What am I? It begs to tell just exactly the thing you are. What defines me? What sets me apart from the others who ask the very same question? What am I? Is it something that can be helped? Why do I need help? Who am I? Do I exist apart from everyone else, or am I just one and the same? Who am I? Does it matter to me or anyone else in the world around me? Who am I? Can I become someone different if I try hard enough? Do I want to? I don't know. Why am I asking this? Is it out of curiosity or fear? Fear of the unknown. Why am I afraid? It's sudden. Why am I worried about things I can't control? Why am I so concerned about the answer to this question when the only answer that matters is my own? We ask questions for an outward opinion, yet we never take our own answer into account. Am I curious? Am I flawed? Am I reckless? Am I an individual? Am I just part of the crowd? Am I important? Do I matter? Is who I am significant, or is who I am a nuance among others who are exactly the same? Yes. I am important. I am flawed. I am selfish. I am curious. I am an individual. I am one of many, yet none of the many are the same. Who am I? A lesson taught in early years of school is giving complete sentences. Why do we need complete sentences if the answer is still the same? Why do we repeat the question to find the answer? We repeat the question to find the answer. Who am I? I am who? I am? I am.
Oh, wow. It didn't feel any less impactful. Oh, goodness. How can all that be packed into a 16-year-old? I just have no idea.
I think it just came out in a burst. I think it's been repressed for a long time, and I just kind of need to Hearing that sound on an audio is probably going to be really weird.
No. It's fine. It was absolutely beautiful. What others do you want to share, and what can you tell us about those?
So I have two more.
Yes.
One is called 1 Minute, which I actually took inspiration from a YouTube channel that I watched, which I know, kind of weird, but it was basically a channel called Unus Annus, which is Latin for 1 year. The motto of the channel is essentially Memento Mori Unus Annus, which Latin translated to English means remember that death is coming in 1 year. And what the channel was 365 days, one video every single day. These guys were just acting like, we're going to die at the end of this year. So we're going to do everything we want to do if we were going to die at the end of the year. And so they did all these amazing, crazy, stupid things. Like they got life lessons from a chicken. Just putting that out there.
No, that's something I have not tried.
But every video had some sort of message to it, whether it was a goofy message or if it was genuine. Like they did actually genuinely, the guys addressed any unresolved conflict between them, and they had like an interpersonal therapy session. And I mean, they're idiots, but it was one of the most moving things I had ever seen. And, everyone gets so wrapped up in it. And then you realize that they keep dropping reminders that in 1 year, it's all going to be gone. 1 year and the channel will be deleted. And, half of us thought, they're not going to get rid of that. And turns out on November 4th, they deleted the channel. None of the videos are there anymore. And I was kind of upset because I really enjoyed those videos. But that sort of gave me a little bit of a tick like, what would happen if I only had like a year left to live? And then the thought kind of went dormant, and I came back to it maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. And I thought, 1 year is kind of a lot of time. What if you only had 1 minute left to live? What if something just came to you and told you, oh, you only have a minute left to live? And so this poem is just sort of something that I wrote, like, I put myself in the mindset that I'm going to die in a minute. So what do I want to, what would I have left to say? What do I want to put out there? Am I happy with myself? Am I proud of what I did? Am I not? Would I be able to think? Just that sort of a mess of rumbo jumbo.
Okay, I have my Kleenex again. We have a procedure here.
Okay. 1 minute. The end creeps upon us like a snake in the grass, the end too close to measure and the end too close for comfort. 1 minute is all you're given. 1 minute to give a grand curtain call or not. Maybe you would go quietly. Maybe you would rather fade like a whisper in a hushed classroom. If you had 1 minute left, what would you do with it? Would you scream? Would you voice your anguish, your fear, your disappointment? Would you cry? Would you make known your sorrow and regret for doing too much or too little? Would you smile? Would you bask in the fulfilled life you have lived? Or would you do nothing? Would you be able to think? Would you be lost in the insatiable ringing in your ears telling you that your time was up? Would you listen to your breaths? Would they be panicked? Would they be as calm as you could manage? Would you breathe at all? Your breaths, they would be your last. If you had 1 minute, if I had 1 minute, If I had 1 minute, it would be easily wasted. I would think too much. I would break. I would panic. Yet somehow I would be at peace with the notion that change was upon me. However, the consequences remain far more dire than any other inevitability that exists in this life. In your last minute, second, would you be proud? Would you find contentment in what your life has given you? Think now, act now. You only have a minute. Use that minute well, for you do not know how many you truly have left. 1 minute, 1 second, nothing.
Oh,
I know. This one is another. I'm the most unextraordinary person that can do some odd little extraordinary things here and there. Again, this is one of my mundane things. I was like, hey, I want to write another slam poetry. So I just searched up prompts for slam poetry, and I just got the idea, hey, like writing, it said, write a letter to yourself. And I said, okay, what if I write a letter to my childhood self? Like if I had my 7-year-old self, 12-year-old self, 13-year-old, just that general age, because I had a really rough time from 2nd grade to 6th grade. I mean, not great. But, I just imagine I was little me sitting across from me on a chair. And what would I need to hear from myself? Like if I were looking at my older self, what would I want to hear? What would I need to know from the future? Like just what little bits of information to know would I be okay? And so I just think, being a little bluntly honest, but adding a sugary edge seemed kind of a fun way to write. So,
I love it.
Letter to my childhood self. Dear mini me, childhood me, younger me, I send my condolences and sincerest apologies. You deserve the life you were given and the love you hold for those around you, but you don't deserve the cost and the trauma. I'm sorry. I wish I had older me to tell me it would be okay, to tell me I would be okay, to tell me I was a good person, to tell me I am enough, to tell me there was nothing wrong with me. There isn't anything wrong with me. You have people to guide you, to listen to you, to help you, to care for you, to love you. Let them. The stigmas are false. The stereotypes are lies. The jokes are just thinly veiled insecurities. They tell you that you're different and call it an insult. Let them. You know that you're different. It's okay to be different, but what's not okay is believing that you are unwanted. You are not unwanted. You were a choice. You were a miracle. You are a miracle. Dear little me, younger me, dear kid, there isn't anything wrong with you. Not a goddamn thing.
Myles, you are going to have to take over this interview. That's one of the most powerful things I've heard in a really long time.
I'm glad you think so.
I know I won't be the only one. Oh, wow. That was stunning. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you said that you're not extraordinary, but I would vibrantly disagree with that.
I do have a poem somewhere about how I wrote that I was painstakingly average. I do genuinely have a poem about my impressive mediocrity, like 8th grade. Okay. I'll have to find that for you.
Well, I like it. If it has a twist like that's uplifting, that's cool. So I'd really like to get more into the writing too. Let's talk a little bit more. So it's poetry, but what is the ultimate vision, do you think, for sharing this gift of yours that you have? What do you want to do? Do you want to write a book? Like, what are you working with Anne on?
Well, with Anne right now, I'm working on a book. Like a book. I've actually done world building, and I had like a concept kind of thrown out there since like probably October of my freshman year, and I'm a junior now. So it's been out there for a really long time, but I'd never just had the motivation to write it because I had never fine-tuned my writing. I had never really honed in on, oh, hey, I sort of have a little talent for writing. Why don't I expand that? I'd never really thought into that. And so after COVID started, my parents gave me the idea of, hey, you should get a writing coach so you can do homeschool and then you can work on your book. You can actually do something that you enjoy doing. And so we found Anne, actually from Phantom Halo, because some of my favorite actors are actually in that film. So
yes, I know. It's crazy. The one guy,
Sebastian Roche.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two for sure. And she and I just kind of got on right off the bat. And from day one, she just wanted to know, okay, so what's your writing style and what do you want to write about? And so after, a while of getting to know each other and getting to know my writing style, we sort of dove into the book. And what it's turning into is, well, what I want to get out there is that I want to use sort of like the escapism of reading a fantasy book, but also making like real issues known, like putting out there that these issues that I'm writing about are very real. They're very present in the world around us, but I want to write it in a way that'll keep people hooked, that it'll get people interested in reading it, and then when I bring in the problem, it'll sort of hit them like a dump truck. And so what I'm writing is it's like a fantasy story centered around mythical creatures, except very modernized. Like there's something like the Loch Ness monster. There's different kind of sirens. I've created a couple creatures of my own, and it's basically taking place in a world where magic was discovered and sold commercially, but it was so overused and so just unfairly distributed that it basically destroyed the world and the environment around it, and it's turned it into a barren wasteland. Sort of like how things are going now. Too much power distributed in uneven places is what's going to eventually destroy society. So that's just sort of what I'm kind of toying at with that idea. And so I think
I love it.
My main idea for writing is to get messages across in a way that'll keep people interested, but also just to bring people a little bit of joy and escapism from reality while adding that element of awareness that some people really need.
That's so powerful. And I think, your experience with adoption, you have this really special angle going into that too. So what else do you want to talk about as far as adoption is concerned and creativity? Because I know for myself as a writer, it's been such a gift to be able to have a place to express and to process and work through feelings and create these ideas that are carefully crafted. And it actually helps connect. It helps me connect to myself and to others more deeply, just the process of going through that. And I think what's really important in the healing process is having some sort of outlet. It doesn't necessarily have to be writing. And I think when you're dealing with complicated issues, if you have a way to express that somehow, some way. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, because a lot of people are struggling not only with adoption issues, but just life.
Yeah. Well, I know for a fact that my outlet was ice skating. I started in second grade because I was kind of miserable. And so I needed something just to sort of escape from that. And I'm still an ice skater today. It's one of my favorite things to do. The only reason why I haven't done it recently is COVID. But writing is definitely a major outlet for me. And I had never thought about it that way before, because initially all writing was essays and just having to write things just so concretely. And so what both my therapist and Anne taught me was tap into your own experiences. Find a way to get yourself in a safe place where you can just touch on those emotions that really, like, if it's hurt, find yourself in a safe place and you'll have backup in case you do go in too far, and just tap into that. Tap into the hurt or the grief or whatever that you need, and just write it down. Write down whatever you're feeling, whether it's on paper or if it's on a Google Doc. Just get it down. Word vomit. Sorry for the graphic image.
No, but I'm not opposed to word vomiting at all.
But, you just need to give... My process for writing is essentially losing myself in the writing. I just always have a backup plan to make sure that I have a way to get myself out, to keep myself safe, but also tapping into those emotions that really do impact me. Like, I have to write, I'm writing a scene about loss in my book, and I recently lost a grandparent, and that was sort of what tapped me into writing that, just because I tried to write it and I never got there. And so I sat down in my room at my little writer's nook desk, and I just sort of let myself get overwhelmed with that feeling again, because I'd sort of pushed it aside, and I just, tears streaming down my face. My fingers are moving a million miles a minute, just garbled words all over the screen. And what I do from that is I just sort of read over it, try and make sense of what little bits I can the next day, and fresh mind, fresh mindset, ready to go, reading whatever mess I have written down and translating it into like comprehensible English. And, that just sort of just tapping into that and then filtering it just seems to be the most genuine way of writing. Like, don't even start editing yet. Just get it down. That's my big thing. Tap into your emotions and just get it out.
Yes, I agree 100%. I think that is such great advice. Absolutely great. I know for me, writing a book at my age about my experiences, I wish I would have had what you have right now, where you're awake and you can begin to utilize this skill in your life now to help you continue to stay in touch with yourself and your feelings and be able to create that space for yourself. Because I think a lot of adoptees, they repress things, they hold things in, and it gets lodged deeply inside. And it's just, you need to be able to release all of that, or it turns out to be depression and anxiety and some of these things. So I'm a big believer in the power of creativity. And I think, Myles, your ability to express is inspiring. And I really think anyone that listens to this cannot be not moved by the gravity of your words and how they land. Just absolutely amazing. I so appreciate you being willing to share that gift with us. And is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we go that you want people to know about adoption? That,
Yes.
You have hopefully the ears of people that are giving up their children, that are adopting, and adoptees. There's a whole lot of people involved in this process, and it can be difficult. So just anything you want to say, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, number one, for anybody involved, there is heartbreak involved. There are the people who are putting up their children for adoption. They're giving up their blood, something they created. And that's, even if the kid wasn't something you wanted, there is going to be that element of ripping a part of you away from you. For the parents that are adopting children, there's going to be the guilt of taking a child from its biological parents. There's going to be a feeling of responsibility. Hey, I'm literally tearing a child away from its parents. Then there's going to be the adoptees themselves who are going to be, whether intentional or not, torn between loyalty to their adoptive parents, the people who have raised them and loved them and cared for them since day one or whenever, to the people that literally gave them life. And I think the one thing that I have been told when I expressing, my heartbreak is get over it. Don't get over it. Get that out. Get it out. All of it. Go to therapy. Talk to your friends who will listen. That is the big part. Build a support system. I mean, I've been lucky to be adopted into a family that is my support system, but some people are really unlucky. And to anybody listening, it's important to know that as long as you have one person, even if it's yourself, that can have your back to make sure that you're aware of your heartbreak and you can process it in a healthy way, that's the first step to healing from whatever process that you're going through. And then second, as an adoptee, I have had my fair share of stigma, stereotypes, insults thrown at me. And because I'm fairly good at sort of not caring about what other people say at this point in my life, just because I've had to deal with it so much, I'm just going to give it to y'all straight. First of all, I've had people frequently point out that I look nothing like my parents, which I'm sure many adoptees and adoptive parents have heard before. Like, I'm fair-skinned, blonde, and blue-eyed, burn like a tomato after being outside for 10 minutes in the sun. Well, my parents both have olive skin, nearly black hair and brown eyes. And I'm 5'10", my parents are 5'6", 5'9". I look more like my aunt's child than my mother's child, and I've gotten my fair share of that. Don't let it get to you. I mean, think of The Ugly Duckling. That's a story about adoption, whether you realize it or not. And hey, the ugly duckling turned into a swan. Y'all are swans. Y'all are peacocks. Y'all are some glorious fancy bird. Accept it. You're cool. You're different. It's a big part of your life. Don't reject that. I mean, I am adopted and I embrace it. I've learned to joke about it with my parents just because we get a kick out of it at this point. Second, I was gonna make another point. Oh yeah. When, as an adoptee, I found that I wind up, whether intentionally or unintentionally, educating other people. I mean, I've been asked a lot of stupid questions. Someone's asked me, how much did you cost? Or,
Oh,
wait, how are you delivered to your parents' house? What kind of question is that? But some of them are intended to sort of poke at you. So when someone tries to jab at you, just remember a lot of thought and time and money had to go into getting you adopted. So you're clearly wanted. You are wanted. People who are biologically with their parents,
debatable.
debatable. I hope y'all know I'm kidding. But just as an adoptee, get yourself in that mindset just so you feel a little bit more, hey, I'm wanted. I'm here for a reason. And some of the questions that I've been asked are purely just uneducated. Like someone who's asked me genuinely, how much did you cost? Like I was adopted at a pet store or something.
Yeah.
I have allowed myself to be an open book about my experiences. Like if somebody asks me, do you know your biological mom? I just give them straight answers. I have no reason to hide. Being adopted is part of who I am. It's what makes me me. Part of it anyways. And I just think allowing my experiences to educate other people will definitely help in the future for either other adoptees that they come across or if they choose to adopt in the future. Like I remember a couple weeks ago, I talked to my friend who, she asked me what being adopted was like and was it a difficult process? And I told her I wasn't sure about the process, but that I think it would definitely be worth it to adopt a kid or become a foster parent. And now she is overall convinced that she wants to adopt or be a foster parent. And just after me giving her a little bit of research and information and just some resources to look into it further. And then also, I'm not saying that everyone has to share their experiences, but there is no shame in educating somebody when their perspective is flawed or if it's warped by stereotypes. And then another thing, I keep going on, I'm so sorry.
No, you don't. I love it.
Another thing is that society seems to enforce the idea that being adopted is a negative thing. People, especially my age, will make jokes and insult people by saying, oh, you're adopted. Like, just say, like, when someone's making fun of people, they'll say, you're adopted, like, you're different. It's like, yes, I am. What's your point? And then also in movies and books, there's often a random bomb dropped on a character like, oh, I need a plot twist and it has to be negative. You know what? Let's make them adopted.
Yeah.
And that just, more often than not, it encourages the idea that it's always a bad thing. That's why it's left to the last minute to tell people, like, it's something you need to be ashamed of. It's something that needs to be hidden. Like, there's a show that I watched. Like, you get through 4 seasons and suddenly the bomb is dropped that she's adopted. And then they make her biological parents the villains. That didn't sit well with me, and I wound up not watching the show anymore. The stigma is a load of BS, and it truly does damage the people that are already hurting. Oh, and I do want to make this very clear. Being adopted does make you different. You're different. But that doesn't mean that being different is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. And again, society enforces the idea that being different is bad. It's not. Yeah. Some of the strangest people, the people with the most eccentric ideas, have done the most amazing things.
No doubt.
Even the people that create those amazing things are still kind of weird. But it's never a bad thing. For example, Alexander Graham Bell created the telephone. The way he wanted to, and the way he wanted people to answer the phone was by saying ahoy. And it was Thomas Edison who said, we should just say hello.
Yeah.
Like, being different's not a bad thing. And, I spent the entirety of elementary and middle school thinking that I was different because everybody had siblings. I was the only person in my class that was an only child, maybe one of the only kids. Everyone can compare which of their parents they're more like. That people would like sit down and compare themselves to their parents. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go sit in the corner. And it, as a 5th grader, it kind of crushed me because I couldn't be a part of that. I felt very alienated from my parents in that kind of moment. Like, I'm not blood related to them. Am I even worth being their kid? Like, it was always coming back to my self-worth at being different, and my circumstances of being are just very alienated from everybody else. And these people all had a concrete place where they belonged because they belonged with their family. They looked like their family. No one would question, oh, hey, are they different? Are they related? Are they friends? Are they being kidnapped? Like, you're not. I'm sure I've had people look at me like that. And the thought of that is heartbreaking because nobody can comprehend just at a first thought, oh, they might be adopted. And, your adoptive parents waited for you. They wanted you. And that's not always a constant in biological families. And I often joke about one woman's trash is another woman's treasure just in regards to my adoptive status. This is my experience. So don't anybody else who definitely does have a different experience, don't take this any way aside from my own experience. Biologically, I was an accident. I was very much an accident. And I really wasn't supposed to happen. But to my adoptive mother, who I prefer to call my real mom, I was anything but an accident. I was a miracle to her, and she calls me her miracle just as a pet name. So I just sort of, hey, I'm a treasure. I belong here. This is who I am, and this is where I belong.
Oh, goodness.
That was
Myles
a truckload.
Redfern. Whoa. I've been doing a lot of these interviews. And this one is extraordinary. It's very special. I know this is going to help a lot of people.
This is my first time ever being out in a public setting, speaking out of with this much attention on me. So
I hope it is not the last. In fact, it won't be the last, because as you feel more comfortable to reveal your real name, I just think that you have so much more to say to so many more people. And I'm just so grateful to you for taking the time to be vulnerable, to be real, to share. It means so much to me. And I know it's going to mean a lot to our viewers and our listeners. And I just hope that we can stay connected. Thank you again for just being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay. We'll see you later. I'll stay in touch. We're going to text.
Yes,
I'm
for sure.
showing you my thumbs. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.